So I'm saying.
What about?
Oh, we did the stack.
It looks like we're thinking about.
You can't get break. This is built on. So good point. They're talking about elevation to this.
As you say.
It just doesn't get built.
It's good. Like.
It's like a 5-second time delay. It's like, what's wearing on broadcast. Y'all systems good? No, what are we missing? Same. Oh, straight side. Oh, that's just it. Yeah, we do need the audio recorders.
Yes.
All right, very good. Yeah. All right, I'm going to proceed to open, just so my board members know, we are not live streaming to YouTube due to technical issues. Our ordinance does not require us to have YouTube live feed. This meeting has been, and I'll get through that, but I just wanted to explain what the hangup was and how we're just going to plow. Okay. All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the October 25th, 2023 BAR large meeting here in the Lenny Krawcheck Public Meeting Room at 2 George Street. My name is John Robinson. I'm the chairman of the large BAR. The other board members present with me this afternoon are Luda Sobchak, Seton Brown, Eddie Bello, who is sitting with us as an alternative, and Steve Ramos also sitting with us as an alternative. Eddie Bello will recuse on agenda item number 5, which is 2 Anson Street. City staff present are Corey Parrish, our city architect, Lawrence Courtney, the staff architect for the city, and Travis Galley, who's here somewhere, our preservation planner. A little run through on how presentations will be handled tonight. Applicants have been required to submit any documents in advance of this meeting by the required deadlines. The staff control the slide presentation. It includes everything submitted by the applicant at the appropriate deadline in accordance with submittal requirements. The applicant simply needs to ask Lawrence where they want to advance backwards or forward in the slides, or to which slide they want to go during the presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name when speaking. This meeting is being recorded this evening. It may be live streamed at some point. This is the first time since pre-COVID we've not been live streamed because we're having an issue with YouTube. It may kick in at some point. This meeting has been published in accordance with South Carolina's FOIA requirements and is being recorded with our FOIA requirements. We will proceed without the live stream and hope that it kicks in at some point. To the extent that the public needs to know it, your presence here is your consent to be recorded. The order of the meeting on each agenda item will proceed as follows. On any individual application, there will first be an introduction and overview of the project by city staff to the board and for the benefit of the public. This is followed by the applicant's presentation. The applicant's presentation has a 10-minute time limit unless extended by the chair by request of the applicant. This is followed by any questions at the time of the applicant by the board or staff. Any and all presenters appearing should clearly state their name for the record. Persons affiliated with the project, be they the architect, owner, developer, designer, or other affiliate, should speak during this portion rather than later portions of the presentation. The applicant's presentation is followed by the public comment period. All these applications are part of the public comment period. Written public comments, which we do accept and consider, were required to be turned in yesterday by noon. I don't believe we have any on our presentations this evening. Comments have been transmitted and disseminated to board members for consideration and will not be read into the record unless requested and then determined by the chair that they should in fact be in the record. Any member of the public who is with us this evening on any individual agenda item is requested to approach the podium. Then they need to state their name and address for the benefit of the record. Public comments are limited to 2 minutes unless extended by the chair. For anyone who's with us for the first time as a member of the public, we are glad to have your commentary. This is your friendly reminder that comments related to zoning, parking, traffic, lot coverage, or livability concerns are not the purview of this board and therefore should not be voiced here. Comments should, if one is wondering what comments are germane, they should be related to architecture, design, context in which the project fits into the city. If appropriate, a conceptual review, height, scale, and mass, a preliminary review, further refinement of architectural direction and moving towards final completion of any individual application. But again, parking, livability, or use concerns should not be voiced at this point, and no item on the agenda this evening would address those anyway, as they're all up for preliminary approval or ministerial action. The public comment period is followed by city staff comments and recommendations from Tori and Lawrence on each individual application. This is followed by the applicant's response period, which may take a period of up to 5 minutes. The applicant does not need to use the time if they don't feel it necessary, and brevity is a virtue. This is followed by board discussion and a vote on each agenda item. At this point, the applicant's presentation is over. Public comment is closed. The applicant may clarify inaccurate information when acknowledged by the chair by raising their hand and waiting to be called upon. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and for their vote on any given motion. The chair will reread a motion verbatim, and if I've misstated it, the movement should correct me so that the motion is read into the record correctly. Once a motion is in proper order and seconded, each member when voting should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor, so as to not mix up a yay and a nay. Results are posted at the city website, which is charleston-sc.gov/BAR. No items have been withdrawn or deferred from our published agenda. There have been no written public comments submitted. This is a friendly reminder to our applicants and members of the public to please turn off cell phones or other disruptive devices. And with that, we will have agenda item A, which is approval of our minutes from the October 11, 2023 meeting as published. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Brown, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bello, the motion is in order. Mr. Ramos, how do you vote on the motion?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Bello,
Yay in favor.
Ms. Sobchak, Mr. Brown,
Yay in
and
favor.
myself, yay in favor. Agenda item B1, I will be reminded to my fellow board members that both agenda items B1 and 2, 47 and 48 Line Street and 52 Line Street are ministerial acts, which we are required to approve after Tori has given her presentation. And as we did last time, I would entertain a motion to hear them in omnibus for items 1 and 2 for the same 1-year extensions. That being said, agenda item number 1, Ms.
All
Parrish.
right. Well, the first one is requesting, it's 47 and 48 Line Street. This is in Cannonboro, Elliottboro, District 8, Old and Historic District, and they are requesting a 4th 1-year extension of a conceptual approval for mixed-use development that was originally granted November 28th, 2018. And then I will go ahead and explain 52 Line Street similarly is requesting a 4th 1-year extension of conceptual approval for mixed-use development, which was originally granted in February 2019. These are both 4th-year extensions. As a reminder, vested rights last for 2 years, and then after that, an applicant can ask for 5 1-year extensions. So these would expire in, November of 2024 and February of 2024. And our recommendation is approval.
Thank you, Ms. Parrish. Is anyone here to speak on behalf of the applicant this evening? That hasn't stopped us before. Is there anyone who would propose an omnibus motion to approve agenda items 1 and 2?
Motion to approve.
There's a motion for Mr. Ramos. Is there a second? Second. Mr. Bello, the motion's in proper order. Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Brown? I abstain. Mr. Ramos?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Bello?
Yay in favor.
And myself, yay in favor. So it passes 4 in favor with 1 abstention. Agenda item number 3.
Agenda item number 3 is 635 King Street. This is 3rd Square Phase 2, Building 1. This is a completely new construction project, also in Cannonboro, Elliottboro, and the Height Districts are 4 and 7, and the Old and Historic District. The applicant is requesting preliminary for a mixed-use building for the 600 block of Upper King Street. The presentation includes historical and site analysis, a master plan, as well as the preliminary design and detail for the project and architectural expression. And we're going to have some text slides. momentarily.
Yep.
Talk a lot slower.
Take a
Probably
second.
best.
Lawrence, squeeze that away.
One deep breath.
Yeah. Oh. We are allowing the applicant to use the clicker to advance slides. The applicant does so at their own peril. Probably better served to get Lawrence to do it.
Actually, it's not working.
Okay.
So.
It's just one of those days.
Looks like we're not.
Okay, so you don't have a choice. Please refer Lawrence to the slide to which you.
All right, let's get some context.
Let's hit it.
What we got some context slides there? All right, context, aerial, location, Curtis Square, phase 1 to the south, phase 3 to the east, Parkway to the north. And some existing site photos of what's on the site right now. And up and down King Street. North. All right, we're ready for the apple. We made it this far.
Well, the architect Richard Morris Hunt was known to say that to work is to pray. There's been a tremendous amount of work to bring this project forward over the last year and a half. So each page has been lovingly crafted and each detail has been created. My name is Christian Sotil, civic design architect for 635 King Street, Building 1, second phase of Curtis Square. I would like to ask Mr. Chairman if we may have just a bit more time for a presentation.
5 or 10-minute extension in addition to the 10.
And,
Okay, very good.
I'm pleased, thank you. I'm pleased to be joined this afternoon by Craig Clements from our firm, Sotil & Sotil. We're also joined by our entire project team who has been working on this revitalization project, in some cases for over 10 years. Scott Parker's here with Design Works, Arian Wolf, Ben Lee Betrow, DJ Ben Sandbrook, and others from the Gray Star team are here. And we have a team from LS3P here with us tonight as well, serving as the architect of record for the project. So we'll be able to answer any questions you may have as we go along. I wanted to start by saying, cities really at their very best are about people and that place within their community and their legacy. We're convinced that it's essential that when we build new building, that we need to build buildings that people can follow. Buildings that are celebratory rather than apologetic, buildings that embody the human capacity for aspiration, artistic expression, and craftsmanship. And I have to say, we're also joined by a core of artisans here tonight from the American College of Building Arts, which I'm incredibly excited about. We'll talk about that as we go along. This is a very special project. I think we've all can say that we've been very intentional in every single aspect of its design. And we began studying this site almost 2 years ago now. We held a public design charrette in April of 2022, which drew significant participation from stakeholders, neighborhood leaders, preservation leaders. In fact, Historic Charleston Foundation, Preservation Society are here tonight. Leaders from Cannonboro, Elliottboro neighborhood were here as well. And we've stayed in touch with them over this development period. In fact, presenting to their neighborhood associations recently, it's the beginning of this month. And they've been in unanimous support for the project. So the design you're reviewing tonight is the result of this public design process. So Lawrence, I think we're ready to advance. I guess we'll launch into the slides for this preliminary submittal. We began by including some of the, we need to kind of move through these early slides, including some of the background for the charrette for those of you that may not have been here or on the board during the time of the charrette, including, of course, the comments from staff and the board at the conceptual approval in June of 2022. And we were certainly given encouragement, I think cautious encouragement to continue forward with a very ambitious building. So to summarize it at that, we can come back to comments in particular if needed. Just a bit about the urban context for this site. It's an important site in that it sits on the King Street corridor, really at the gateway to the peninsula as we know it today. And with the additions of the highway. As we studied the site going back historically, we realized this larger block at one time, it's had many lives. There was in fact a church on the site, St. James Church. There's no evidence of what that church looked like, but we've sort of endeavored to understand the nature of the site over time as the city grew. The site as we know it today is sort of going through an industrial hangover period, parking lots, and it's ready to reclaim its position on the finest street in Charleston. The photographs of the site are provided here as part of the packet, and you'll sort of see a forlorn King Street in some of these views. It's lost its physical expression, it's lost its pedestrian orientation. But all the building blocks there. I will say, if you look at the image in the top left, there is a skyline view of the site from the Septima Clark Parkway as you come around that corner, and that's something that was on our mind as we began to think about what is the building's responsibility to the street first, but then also to the city skyline. So this really came together for us during the design charrette, and we've included just a few of those pages. It's a week-long public design process that we held right near the site in the old printing building of Post and Courier. But it also involved a lot of time in the field and very meaningfully time we were able to spend with the faculty and students at the American College of Building Arts, which really launched a commitment to reinvesting in the built environment and reuniting the arts and new work, which for a building of a larger scale is a tall order. It's one that we've all taken very seriously, but that inspiration and that partnership began almost 2 years ago. We asked a lot of questions at the charrette that lead to the design, and if I had all night, we'd talk about all of it. But in particular, the need to celebrate the skyline again, to reanimate the skyline. The buildings, certainly in Charleston, are known for what they contribute to the skyline. So thinking of the head of a building in this humanistic way of thinking about architecture, what you place in the skyline becomes the definition of that. So we thought of ourselves more as hatters. And not architects during the charrette. And then the street, thinking of ourselves more as cordwainers or fine shoemakers. So we think about how a building touches the street. Remembering the most important things a building will ever do is touch the street and touch the sky. So spent a lot of time during the charrette talking and thinking through that. Certainly Jack Alterman and Susan Romain's fine book on the cornices of Charleston remind us what the city is known for, buildings that are still here and buildings that have been lost over time. And remembering, this is important, because certainly you're going to see there's a very much a call to action with this building and bringing back an exuberance, bringing back a celebration of the built environment and the work. And we have to remember that this is what Charleston does. It does it better than almost any other city you can think of. So we brought that thinking into the design of the building, into the charrette, and it really became the foundation of our thought. We published what we call the small manifesto on this as we work through that process. Lawrence, you can. There we are. So the building, and if you've seen the package or you were here during the conceptual approval process, its principal approach to King Street creates 3 pavilions. You can see that in the bottom center of this image. This came out of the charrette. 3 pavilions that would activate the skyline for the pedestrian on King Street with a 5-story, 4-story, 5-story, 4-story, 5-story movement. So you don't have this dead skyline on King Street. And then we've actually created our distant skyline, the regional skyline, as a much simpler, quieter, lighter expression. And that came through that process. And you can see actually in that perspective view in the top left, the presentation of that skyline from the bridge view and a very prominent parapet that marks that space. So the manifesto, and we really see this as our report card for this project from day one to the very end. We're at the second stage of a 4-stage approval process, but this remains our call to action, that the solution for this building must be humane and it must be of Charleston. It must relate well to all frontages. This is a unique site that has 4 very distinct frontages with different obligations. It must beautify the skyline and it must reward the street experience. So those are those things we know to be true. So the building presents to the skyline an elevated parapet. So that's to the regional viewer of the skyline. It's designed as a contribution to add up to other elements that are coming into this skyline. The cupola of the peninsula, the senior living project that's just to the south of us, the clock tower of the Guild. So elements on larger buildings that become part of Charleston's skyline over time. From the neighborhood, this idea of creating pavilions really helped us to think about approaching from Cannonboro, Elliottboro, looking up Bogart Street toward a new park that has an oak tree that's being relocated, a beautiful oak tree that becomes a connecting link through a new alley, Gabriel's Alley, all the way up to King Street, presenting a residential entrance and a pavilion to the neighborhood there that harkens to the residential form language of the roof lines. And then on King Street, really the principal facade is the 3 pavilion approach. And one observation of modern residential or multifamily development is often that the entrance is hard to find, and we felt with this project the entrance should be front and center, and it's exactly what you'll see. We'll talk about that in detail. So the architectural drawings that we've presented at the preliminary review have been curated from a much larger set of drawings, but what we've built here for your review tonight at the preliminary stage of approval, we would like to walk through to show you all the principal elements, all the principal details and forms. Really, I guess we'll start with the floor plans. These are the approved conceptual floor plans, and what you'll see is King Street is at the bottom. So we have our retail frontage along King Street with our primary residential entrance in the center. Then if you look to the left of the drawing, this is Gabriel's Alley, which heads into the neighborhood. Along the top is Ackerman's Garden, which is also an interior, a new courtyard space. And then St. James Court is to the right side of the drawing here. That's actually set inboard from Line Street. That's where entrances to both the vehicular parking as well as bicycle parking and some of the services are taken in the property more in the mid block. As you'll see, the retail frontage on King Street is foremost about fronting King Street in that manner. The residential entrances in the alley and the garden are designed to create a scale and a texture and movement in those surfaces to create an inviting experience. So this compares the development of the design during the last 18 months of work. And so what you're seeing here is the floor plan, the main level floor plan here, which captures all the intent that you saw in the conceptual document. And as we go through the building, this is a building that fronts all 4 sides. You'll see that as you go up through the building. It has residential use on the upper levels. Excerpt from the construction documents. As we move up to levels 5, we have a private courtyard that's part of the building that's sort of back on toward the garden side of the building, also as a way to start to bring that massing, to break that massing down. Let's see the preliminary design here. And then as we go up to levels 6 and 7, the building starts to pull back from the neighborhood side, and then continues up on the King Street side, set back from those 3 pavilions, and also in fact set back from both the left and the right sides to also to create a data line of massing at that 4- and 5-story level. So you see that here in the approved design. One element as we go to the Lawrence, if you put forward to the approved design at the roof level. I want to point this out, and I'll point it out on the elevations as well. At the conceptual design, we had a scheme with 4 of these large parapet features that kind of marched across the building. It looked good diagrammatically. That is something in further study that we've modified our approach to that. We realized the parapet that what really started the need for this was to have a really stunningly beautiful parapet facing Line Street, facing the regional, that regional skyline that we were looking at and inspecting. So, which we from the highway. So we've modified that to really focus our energy on detailing and developing that as the primary parapet. I'll show you on the elevation some of the other thinking there, but that is a change I wanted to point out. So here, what you're seeing stacked above and below is the approved conceptual design in the upper register and the preliminary design, which is an excerpt from the construction documents at the lower level. And I would say when to look at this briefly, you would say it should look like the same building. It is the same building. But I can't tell you how much work there has been to get from the top image to the bottom image. The top image was our conceptually approved design, and it was designed and drawn by hand. We're working, of course, as we work through our construction documents. We're actually 50% construction documents now. We've been working to preserve the integrity of the approved design. And for a project that has a lot of organic forms, it has a lot of complexity in the geometries. You'll see this laurel arch geometry throughout the design. Being able to reconcile that and to be able to vet every aspect of that facade, to be able to present the image below, we're extremely excited about. And I can tell you it's been a lot of hard work between them, but we're pleased to put them side by side to show that there's a straight line between the development of the project. So you're looking at the King Street facade here, from the approved to the preliminary. And we're going to zoom in a little bit closer on each of these as we go along. This is the facade on Ackerman's Garden that you're seeing here. And again, approved design above, preliminary design below. This is the facade that's toward the neighborhood side, although there's another row of buildings between this building and on the secondary elevations, on the side elevations, what you're seeing here, and I want to point this out, there were some minor adjustments on the secondary facades, the intervening parapet height that you can see between the two end pavilions. We brought that down by a floor, and we maintained, this is in Gabriel's Alley, we maintained the bay balconies up in that space to help to aerate and animate the skyline. So this is one adjustment that I could call your attention to. We believe is in fact more consistent with the design that we can build on. And again, if we go around to St. James Court, here again we brought the parapet height of the intervening architecture down by one level. We again think that also helps to moderate the scale of the overall project. There's also an adjustment at the entry, the vehicular entry in the center of the building, that would allow for 3 vehicles instead of 2. So we studied that area and developed a strategy for developing that visually and structurally to stay with the design thinking, but accommodate that programmatic. The bicycle entry is to the right, and we in fact modified an entrance to the left of that as well to create another residential entry into the lobby there. So these are all part of that secondary interior facade. I wanted to just point that out. And then these are the interior courtyard elevations that were prepared, approved. So for the facades, we presented the drawings at 3 different levels of detail. The 200 series drawings are here, which show the overall elevations for context, and also you have call outs for each of the individual elements that are enlarged and developed at greater detail. So we're seeing here the front elevation and Gabriel's Alley elevation, and then here we're seeing the elevation on Ackerman's Garden and the elevation on St. James Court. So this series is placed as a way of getting you locators to move into the more detailed drawings that follow, as well as section cuts. These are the interior facades and setback facade. Building sections through the building, and I'm pleased to say we've been working extensively with the LS3P team as the building has been developed to ensure that there's absolute concurrence between all the facade detailing and the framework of the interior building. So it's a glimpse of that section. series of wall details shown here, which really I think they're helpful for us at this stage of the development of the project to show the depth of these facades and movement in these facades. I think it's very important for a building of this scale to be to have those protocols thought through in terms of the assembly of each of the facades. So there's a series of wall sections of all of the conditions through the building shown here, 206 and 207. So the next series of sheets, the 300 sheets, are where we take all the most important conditions of the building and enlarge them to go through the entire roster of materiality and start to identify where those key elements of detail are. And I'll say here, as you can see, this is the central entrance to the building, which is an area, as we've been working with the American College of Building Arts, we've really been working on finding those areas of the building where detail is most warranted. It's, without question, that the front entrance is the place. But as we go through the building, you'll see those details incorporated throughout the design. So you're seeing here again a real focus on street level, and then a focus on the pavilion mass and the skyline on King Street. This is one of the corner pavilions on the King Street frontage here. And another example of a lot of focus on getting texture and getting handmade quality to the storefronts at the street level. But then also getting the geometries and the proportions of the skyline and that King Street skyline, right? And getting all this compound ellipse geometry resolved into design. These are some of the intervening elements along that King Street frontage. We have a rhythm of 4 bays that sit between the pavilions, 2 at each side. There is a keystone. If I could point, I would say at the top of each of those window stacks, there's a keystone. So there are 4 feature keystones along King Street. I'm going to talk about those a little later on. A lot of attention is focused on King Street, as you might imagine. As we look around at some of the other facade enlargements, I think what you'll see that really as we go around the building, that we've looked for areas where detail can be incorporated throughout. So for example, as we turn down Gabriel's Alley, we have our retail frontage on this first 3 bays folding around the corner, but you'll see also decorative inserts that are cast or carved into limestone and set above each of those pilasters. So really anywhere you look, there's an opportunity that's been calibrated, but an opportunity for handmade detail. The bay balconies, as we move through the Gabriel Valley, it really is a way of creating texture and layers and aerating that facade. We have small individual residential entrances, 16 entrances along this, the alley, Gabriel's Alley and Ackerman's Garden, each with an opportunity for custom ironwork at its entry gate. And then this is the side of the pavilion as we head toward the Oak Park. This is that smaller, sort of more romantic residential entrance that you'd see from the neighborhood as you come into the Oak Park. It's sort of a diminutive version of those King Street pavilions. And then this is that central portion of the building where the internal courtyard is. And again, a decorative element to help enliven that facade and add the light to that view. And then we move into the 400 sheets, and we presented just a few of them here just to give a sense of the work that's been done. The 400 sheets, as you might imagine, move up to another scale beyond the 1/4-inch scale of the elevations we were just reviewing. And here we've gone into all of the key areas of the building and really worked through the geometries with the entire team, the professional team, the builders, and in fact, masons that have been brought on already to help us finalize each of these details. And so you're seeing some of the most complex geometries here in this sheet entrance. Also, what's good about this, it's giving us real rules to proceed with on some of the architectural details. Those panels that you see to the left and right of this central arch are designed as a complement to the keystone over that central entry. And that is one of those elements that we've been working carefully with the ACBA on as part of the decorative program of the building. So this gives us a chance to really be very specific about exactly how big that panel will be and where it sits and courses into the brick, so we can begin preliminary designs and mock-ups of those elements. So we'll talk a little bit about that too as we go further along.
These drawings also, they kind of serve like almost like shop drawings for the masonry. So like working out all the gauging of the brick for these arches, and that's kind of another function of, they're meant to really dial in coursing and all those sorts of things for the masons. So there's no guesswork on something this complex.
Yeah, here again at one of the upper pavilions, taking one of these laurel arches and really working through all the coursing of the brick, the gauging, the setback elements within that, so that we have a really clear picture of what we're trying to accomplish. I'm pleased to say the mason that we're working with is already building these field testing these designs in their shop to ensure constructability and technique. So there's been a very deliberate approach to all of the details I see. As we move along the side here, you'll also see there are elements that are designed to be repeated in series. Like you can see here the capitals of those pilasters and the bases of those pilasters. Those are details that we would cast in series, but we're working with the team at the ACBA to create the original positive molds for those, so that they're all elements are either hand carved as originals, or where we have a series of repetitive elements that where there are many repetitions are actually all coming from a mother mold. This is that pavilion toward Bogart and St. Philip Street here. We printed out a few of these too, if you'd like to come take a closer look at a larger scale. I know the resolution on these presentations gets reduced for the web, but we printed out just a few to show the progression of the design from the conceptual approval to the current drawings. And as you might imagine, a lot of this is developed in 2D. I think there's a real challenge in our time, because we used to make buildings by hand and we love those buildings, and we don't make them that way anymore. So moving from all the handwork done during the charrette into a digital environment, we found that working in that digital environment, we were best served by creating composite drawings, where we were drawing parts by hand and drawing parts as vector-based digital line work. So you'll see that on some of these drawings, that they're not all one or all the other. We're really proud of that. It's really been time consuming, but we're really excited about it because we feel like we have to. This is a handmade building. We have to keep that thought in mind as we work through every aspect.
There's also a lot of attention paid in these, you'll notice, to the depth of facade elements. So there's a lot of this kind of profiling of facade depth, because you feel like a building like this, the worst thing that can happen to it is it gets flattened out, and that's always the impulse of the mason, the VE process. Like, let's make it flatter, and we're being very careful to make sure that it has depth and relief. It's critical.
So another example at a 400 level, here we have a larger medallion that's been cast into the surface or carved, but then plates in the surface during the coursing of the brickwork. We could go on. This is a close-up of that parapet element at the courtyard level up on level 5. Yeah, sort of a gift to them. It's funny, and we realize with decorative details, none of these things are required, right? And that's the world that we're in now. It's the third element of the Vitruvian triad. The thing that's not required is actually the thing we need most right now. So we've really, as a whole team, we've worked very carefully to take the promise of a beautiful building and hold on to that promise with every decision, knowing that none of these things are required, that they all, in a sense, are required by what the city stands for and what the future is. So, and I could go on about that, but just to say I hope you see that in everything. Close up at the alley level there, where again we have pilasters, limestone pilasters that are set into that facade that are actually modeled on some of the coursework that the ACBA is doing already today in their studios. So everything has been done with an eye toward implementation and feasibility. Close-ups of some of the ironwork designed for that alley. A bit of this on the storefronts here, this again to show that the storefront design is meant to be a built-up storefront, not so commercial as so many storefronts are today. We have two types of storefronts along King Street, one of the ones at the corner pavilions and then the intervening ones, then of course the central entrance all of its own. And then to the decorative,
The fun part.
the fun part, to the decorative details, we wanted to share some of the thinking here in this sort of question about returning to the art of building. We felt there was maybe no more appropriate location than the central entrance to the building. So the keystone that sits above that central main entry on King Street is symbolic in bringing together architecture, painting, and sculpture again. And so our keystone represents a figurative allegory to architecture. And to the left and right, we have the limestone panels there represent painting and sculpture, both supporting architecture. So that's sort of a thesis within a thesis. But we felt like this was the place to do it. Really create something to stop and study, and something that is made by people. And I think that's what the resource of the American College of Building Arts is such an incredible asset to not just the Charleston, but to the world. So we're very excited about this. We have field tested even these mock-ups. We've printed them out at full size and we've held them up in public. We've had sometimes gone to parking garages. We got kicked out a few times to be able to climb up to a height in which a detail will be seen from the street, to hold that detail up and tested size, and in some cases we made small adjustments. So we presented some of those here. The 4 keystones that I mentioned along King Street each represent 4 seasons. So and 4 seasons of architecture. So the spring is the Art Nouveau, and the summer is full-blooded classicism. Autumn is Baroque, and the winter is a Gothic design. So another story, of course, all sort of playing off the same theme. We actually have just to give you a sense of scale. These are some of the mock-ups of these elements that have been prepared. We've been able to take those out in public and hold them up. And boy, I tell you, the stir that created on King Street the day that we were doing some of those mock-ups, everyone stopped and looked up. We were standing at the county parking garage, which is rather bland building. So it's sort of an interesting moment of recovering a little bit of joy in the building environment.
The security guard let us know he had us on
He
film.
thought we were protesting. Well, we're protesting. This is a great example of a property of the building that's also woven into the creative inspiration of an individual artist. So we've provided some samples here of the carved insets that we have throughout the building in different places, but they're modeled on capacities that are already here in the program at the ACBA and among its students, among its faculty, certainly, and graduates. So there's a number of these throughout the building. These present an example of design, but the idea is that they each have their own fingerprints as they're carved, all within the dimensional constraints of coursing into the building. There's samples behind. We do have some samples. Yes, I want to hold that just a second because this is very exciting. We just hold that thought for just a second. Lighting is something we're also working on with the college. We see there's a number of future fixtures that we're working through with them to see that feasibility. We can certainly find commercial fixtures as well, but we want to pursue this for some of those key moments over entries. And then moving to materials and specifications, we've provided just an overview of the coloration and the tonal properties of the building, and we have physical samples here tonight of those color properties. So if you want to look forward here. And this tracks back to the conceptual approval. We see this building with a lighter tonality. It's a, you might say, a more feminine building. It sits between two darker red brick, more institutionally classical buildings. So we've always seen it having a slightly more saturated buff color at King Street, slightly lighter, less saturated color on the upper levels that are set back. And so we were showing some color samples here tonight. And then the complementary colors for the infills, the spandrels, those we see in a darker tone. So we're showing a representative color palette here tonight. And that theme really, this building is very much about a unified expression and a single theme. So we get that with that. Of course, this will be vetted again through final construction documents. It'll be vetted, of course, ultimately in the mock-up panel. But we wanted to provide that the direction and show the how it relates back to the conceptual design as well. And then as we move up into the building, slightly lighter brick. And then, kind of softening lines in that upper cornice. Down in one of the alleys. And there's actually a significant, you're going to hear a bit more about the landscaping in just a few minutes from the design works. But that's very much part of the experience of going through the gardens in the alley. Window door specifications, at least, sort of basis of design, this stage of design. And I wanted to close our presentation with a chapter on this, because this has really become very central to everything we've been doing with this new building, creation of a new soul in the city. And it's the art of building. We wouldn't be here talking about this without the American College of Building Arts. I'm so delighted to see we have a huge turnout of faculty and students here tonight. Joseph Kincannon, Steve Kester, Angela Cabana, I'm not sure if she's here tonight. We've been working with Matt Garten. The leadership has been very supportive. And it's easy to say we're going to do this, but it's actually not so easy to do it. And William Santiago from our office has been full-time working with the ACBA now for over a year, multiple meetings, vetting every detail that you see here. And so I wanted to share that with you to let you know how excited we are about it. And so we put in a few photos just to represent some of those many visits. We've got the Gray Star client team here. And in fact, we were just in the studios again today, meeting with the casters to work out exactly how the models are going to make it into the document. Well, there's a field test of a mock-up from top of the parking deck. But I'm extremely pleased to say, and I can always bring samples of bricks and colors, but it's not so easy to bring actually hand-carved limestone examples to you. And I'm incredibly pleased to say we can do that. And unbeknownst to us initially, but Joseph Kincannon, one of the lead faculty in the stone carving, took some of the drawings months ago as they were being developed and took them into the studio. And what you're seeing in the photos here are the medallions and the inserts based on the drawings of this project. So you might say this is a preliminary design, but it's in a sense cast in stone or cut in stone. So we were pleased back at the studio today to see a couple of those examples. We wanted to bring them tonight to share with you all. Why don't you bring them into the center?
Want to ask first.
So thank you, Steve. So yeah, so this is just to give you a taste of what the enthusiasm that this project has created for all of us. But I'm so grateful for this collaboration as it's unfolded here. And this is, I think, a wonderful example of how these natural forms, as we've talked about, the thematic program of the building, whether it's the months of the year, in the case of our columns, or the seasons, or the relationship of art and nature that you see in these decorative inserts. So we are thrilled, and we really appreciate you guys bringing these in here tonight. They're not light. But thank you.
Would it be too much of an imposition to leave them there?
Yeah.
Leave them.
Yeah, and in fact, one of the keystones, which is in progress, in fact,
That is,
was
which ones?
this is summer.
Summer, yeah.
This is summer. Is underway as we speak. So
You're
I
not
can
supposed to
say-
start making stuff before you get approval, but this stuff takes a really long time to make, so we're fingers crossed.
But if you need models for the rest of the seasons.
Pick a season.
Where we find out there's 5 of something on it.
There are 13 pilasters, so each one is planned to be a season of the year, and then the 13th will be the sun in which the earth revolves around. So that's the creative brief for those. So if you want to pick a season, yeah, or a month, what's that? And I could go on as much about the ironwork as well. That's such another hallmark element of Charleston's built environment, one that the ACDA excels at. In fact, they've recently moved their ironsmithing studio across the street from this building. They're in the old printing shop of the old Post and Courier. So it's literally across the street. Just this idea that we could make a larger building today, but make it from home. It's something that I can't tell you how excited we are about. Matt Gard, he was at the ironsmithing world championships in Tuscany just a few weeks ago. So we have world-class talent across the street. So we close with that really, and I think it's like I've probably gone on beyond my time already, but we're incredibly excited to be here after a very long journey, and this idea that we can make new landmark buildings, we can make an architecture that celebrates the art of building and provides beautiful and rewarding experiences to the public. So, thank you.
You've been very generous with your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sotil. I think that's a record-setting 40-minute presentation. I didn't even ask you for more time because it was such an excellent presentation, which of course we know you're used to doing. Thank you. Members of the public wishing to be heard on this agenda item, just out of personal curiosity, my privilege, how many guests or members of the public who are with us tonight are College of the Building Arts students or affiliates?
Yes, hand up.
Very good. Thank you for being here and thank you for your work. Very good. Members of the public wishing to be heard on agenda item number 3.
Justin Schwebler, Historic Charleston Foundation. I just want to thank Christian and Craig for meeting with us several times over the last few months. I just really want to commend them for what's been clearly a very long year of project and progress and hard work. We also want to commend the design development team with Greystar for supporting this project and really kind of breaking the mold of what multifamily commercial residential structures can look like and incorporating handcrafted materials back into architecture in Charleston. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwebler. Other members of the public?
Anna Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We greatly appreciate the project team keeping us updated as this design has progressed towards preliminary review. We continue to feel this is an outstanding example of high quality architecture that's unique, but also reflective of the community's values and Charleston's distinct character. The level of thought and time invested in the submittal, including the craftsmen, on behalf of the project team, including the craftsmen who will execute the design, is exceptional. We're so supportive of the partnership with the American College of the Building Arts, and we really feel this sets a new standard for large-scale new construction in Charleston. As this project advances, we do want to underscore the importance of adhering to authentic materials and details in craftsmanship as portrayed at the stage, which we have the utmost confidence in this team's ability to deliver. And upon review of the submittal, we are encouraged that the fundamental elements of the conceptual design remain unchanged. We did, however, note the removal of the southern parapets that were addressed in the presentation as a loss and felt this very roof form would have provided nice skyline views from potentially the interior neighborhoods and further down King Street. Based on conversation with the applicant, we do understand that future visibility is in question, but we would just encourage continued study of the roof line as it will be experienced from all vantage points as the design development phase progresses. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Other members of the public wishing to be heard on this agenda item? Seeing none. City, don't worry, we'll have questions for that. We'll have all the time you want. I see you chomping at the bit. City staff comments or recommendations.
Okay, I do have some things I want to say, so just, the preliminary package for the building at 635 King Street depicts a refinement of detailing and visible elements for the building since the conceptual approval in June 2022. The language around the building continues to be consistent but varied depending on use and cohesive with many moments of delight. The thought and consideration for each exterior wall plane and ceiling plane and interaction is appreciated. Staff is pleased to see that the American College of Building Arts has been engaged to provide handcrafted elements such as wrought iron railings and carved stone elements. One thing of delight, I'm actually delighted about this. It's something I read about the college before I even came here, and I think the partnership is a really good move. The proposed colors are found to be harmonious together and to enrich the color palette of this portion of King Street. Applicant is encouraged to seek material and product approvals by final review. The mock-up is expected to be extensive, but to also serve as a learning tool to test many conditions. As usual, it will also serve as an on-site guarantor of workmanship. Related, it will be extremely important to apply as much care with the implementation and coordination in field as is depicted in the drawing set. This will require skilled craftsmen and a careful eye to craftsmanship and the alignment of elements. A high level of quality control will be critical. And last, related to a couple of concerns about submittal requirements, the preliminary review as stated in the submittal requirements and in the ordinance is a review of the development of the conceptual design and its relationship to its context in terms of the project's details, materials, and finishes. This phase defines the level of quality of construction and the relationship of the building's components to surrounding buildings and to one another. The requirements also indicate that the wall sections should depict various construction systems and materials. And this review is expected to reflect 40% completion of the CDs. The applicant has indicated that they satisfactorily completed a 50% CD review. Additionally, staff has met with the applicant and is confident that they have explored and discussed many real-world issues that go beyond what is seen in the presentation package. So staff condition of approval is to consider quality control measures to implement for the construction phase. And staff recommendation is preliminary approval with board and staff conditions.
Any response from the applicant? Good, good. Mr. Bello, we're now in the board discussion in both phases.
Well, I have a few questions and I was hoping you could just, and I wasn't here for conceptual, so the only sort of major design change that I can see occurred at the top. Can you talk us through why the proportions changed and why those elements were eliminated? You said you studied those, but I'd just like to hear why to me, it's a significant change.
With the two elements at the top being.
Well, there used to be some raised parapet that was on the south facade, I believe, and the proportion went from, you've got those arches up there, and the amount of space above those arches substantially grew. And I'm just curious why.
So, two things on the, and maybe Lawrence, if you could go back to the perspective views, that would help. The parapets that we presented in the conceptual approval, in a sense, they made for a more successful diagram for the building. This is always the reality of a three-dimensional building and what you see in a two-dimensional elevation. And so we presented sort of 4 marching parapets across the roof, which were all really born from the parapet. And it's actually, you see it here on the bottom sheet. We have a masonry portion of the building that reaches all the way up to carry that parapet. And that's the parapet that is seen. In fact, it's really the only parapet that is seen on the building. And it's the reason that form came about during the design process for conceptual, because it presents itself to the highway. The others, I will say, diagrammatically on a two-dimensional elevation, we thought they helped the overall conceptual design. But as we studied them, we realized they didn't relate as well as we thought they did. Because if you, and Lawrence, if you could go back to maybe back up to comparative elevations, what you'll see is that
Go back one more.
the other parapets were sort of added on, and they didn't relate so well to the cornice below. We have a metal cornice that's that marching sort of backbeat, that rhythm that's there. And as we tried to reconcile, in fact, and we really did kind of work through it a number of different ways, and we felt like we don't really want to be there as much as we thought they did. They look great in plan, and they look great, in elevation. But we realized it's sort of fighting the tectonic language of the building, because we're trying to make the building lighter as we go around, and sort of putting this heavy parapet above the metal cornice seemed sort of like an afterthought, like they were tacked on. Whereas where we really want it on St. James Court, it's sitting on an entire brick pedestal. It comes all the way down to the ground. So as we studied it, and we realized, we're trying to make this impossible building happen. Where can we, as designers say, this is an area we think we can simplify and we will not be hurting the final effect of the building. We really do, I would rather get one parapet really, really good, the one that really, really matters, and not do three that don't really want to be there. And in fact, Anna Catherine Carroll from Preservation Society mentioned that we talked about this, the Liberty Senior, the peninsula will actually be built adjacent to this. So there is no visibility to it. So we felt, every building evolves a bit along the way. This was one development that we knew we were certainly very comfortable with, but we wanted to be very clear that it was an adjustment. We went back to our perspectives to see if we needed to change our perspectives and realized the other three parapets don't show up because they're not visible. So we felt like this was a change that was easy to make in a sense. The other change was lowering the intervening roof line between the two corner pavilions, which also doesn't show up in any public view. When you're inside the alley, and I'll say the reason for it is it produces a more constructible building. We have a concrete frame podium up to that level, and to have that extra level framed above it actually created construction complexities that weren't worth it. And from a massing point of view, it's a plus to the project because it brings that roof line down in the alley. And of course, your view line grazes up over it anyway. So in elevation, you would say, okay, that proportion is different, but from the eye level looking up in the alley, that view line grazes up to that sixth floor. So those were, it's interesting, sometimes construction realities make you do things you don't want to do. This was one we heartily embraced because we thought it made it a better building.
I want to piggyback on that. Stealing your next, I know you have more. We're going to be here all night. Can you go
A lot
to,
like that.
can you go to the, I think it's the previous slide, 313. It's the King Street elevations. Yeah, so it's similar, the revisions to the top part of the building. The original version was very glassy, like the top, let's call it the tower of the building was, it's hard to see in these drawings, but it was gridded glass basically from pilaster to pilaster. And you can see it in the 3D sketch as well. And that seems to have been cut down almost by about 50%. I could probably hypothesize why, but what are your thoughts on that?
Christian, do we have the blow up from the conceptual submittal in our slide deck anywhere? We did have an enlargement of that in the conceptual view that had those cheeks beside the glass.
It might be in you might have a hard copy right next to you in the case. Right there. So as we studied the upper level, we did bring the panels in and reduce some of the lighting up there. Our thought, we have these fins that project 2 feet or more. In some cases where the balconies are, they actually go back into the building. We're really trying to put our focus on the brick, the fins, and create real depth in those fins and really focus on the craftsmanship of these softening lines in the corners. We want that to be absolutely the focus. And so we think everything between there needs to be dark and recessive, whether it's glazing, whether it's paneling. We did bring the paneling in as one of the development evolutions of the design between conceptual.
That's Stephen.
Okay.
So, or it's, it was anticipated, certainly a conceptual, there's sort of a pound. The approach is really to have that feel like almost an interior space. If you look at the details, we're paneling, we're doing sort of built up panel details there. So you almost feel like you're inside the building. And it's all, I think you'll see in the color scheme, it's actually a Farrow and Ball, very dark, very recessive color. So it all sort of blends out. We want the eye to stop at the piers and really look at the craftsmanship of the cornice there. But thank you for the question, the observation.
Sure.
Other questions?
Yeah, I got a couple more. I know y'all are ready, but and this is not any kind of criticism, I'm just asking. Can you walk us through, and I can't remember the sheet, some of the storefront details there's, of course, amazing detailing for the brick and everything, but behind that, I read a lot of cementitious panels. I don't know what they're called, smooth composite paneling. Can you, and I'm interested, and it may be the next level, but I'm interested how, one, how much of that stuff is there, and two, what kind of glazing system we have that's tied into that. Is it storefront? Is it a handcrafted window? Doubt all of that.
Well, yeah, you know the deal with glazing these days.
Right.
So maybe I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Talk to that.
And I don't know what sheet that is. I wrote down about it. But I won't.
Probably in the 400.
So we finished a building, not too long ago at 741 Meeting Street. It's the, Office of Middle Street Partners. And we did some experiment with wood, that was a wood storefront, hardwood. And the approach we took to that is it's basically soft framed. It has millwork applied to it, and then the windows are windows, like hello, they're just like. And so that's similar thing we're thinking here, only large scale commercial building, we may want to use poly ash or, other more durable materials in a painted finish rather than use mahogany. That one was actually designed to be painted, but when we saw the mahogany, we kind of like, we couldn't paint it.
Yeah.
So, but that's the thinking is that, and so we haven't identified finally like which range of products would work together for that the best, but poly ash has been one that I've used that seemed to work pretty well. The Boral product, that's one. But it may be an assembly of a few things that have to do different jobs.
And I see a lot of paneling in that, and I've not used poly ash. But, how do you panelize that?
It has,
Because you can't like.
right, you can't, routing it. It comes in a range of millwork trim profiles, just like PVC and wood and all the other things. So you can usually get that range of profiles and build, it's an assembly of flat trim, panel molding.
Like wood,
flat
but
panel.
just.
Yeah,
Okay.
Built up paint.
but it's smooth painted, the finished effect is like a wood store.
Yeah, okay, that's very helpful.
Mhm.
And then I'll try to
That's okay.
be quiet. Same thing for the upper windows. Again, you've got, wonderful details, and I worry about what that window will really look like. And we don't have any jam or head details. Is that just going to come in final? Is that the plan?
It would cut, yeah, so we're still,
Still figuring
these
it
things,
out, yeah.
building of this scale, you're working through various suppliers, but of course the mock-up will have a window installed in it. The desire is kind of direct set appearance where it's, not a lot of sash exposure. It's kind of like factory glass. That's what we're going for.
Okay. All right, and then last question. The panels, the insets, is that an accurate thickness? First of all, are they all carved or any of them cast? I was a little unclear what the materials were.
So these are the real, these will go on the building.
Yeah, okay.
But they will be shaved down to be 3 5/8 inches.
That's what I was gonna
portions,
ask. What's
or
holding that
4 3/8 if we wanted to stick up, depending on how the review.
I was just trying to figure out how that would work with brick.
And you might want to talk to the hand carved pieces versus the.
Yeah, some of the repetitive elements, like we said, that are coarse and are structural, that are
Yeah.
larger, like the pilaster bases and casts, those would be built off clay models, clay positives. These smaller elements that can be done in series, I think we have 4 of the largest size. There are 26 of the smallest ones. So, they're all quantified. We know, their size and how many they are. Our goal is for those to all be hand carved.
And all the one-off pieces like the keystones for the 4 seasons, that's all hand carved.
Yeah, I figured.
And the idea here too, when in doing these models, they left them extra deep. I had the same question when I first saw them. I said, it's a lot easier to take stone off than to put it back
Right,
on.
right.
So,
I was just
so
curious.
these are, but the idea is they'll be, coarse staying.
Perfect. I was just curious because it's not a load bearing masonry wall, it's a veneer, and how's that going to be held up in an arch?
We are experimenting with making the arches actual load bearing arches.
Okay.
Just to say that on the masonry, we had an RFP for master mason 6 months ago. This never happens during design development. We interviewed a number of master masons. We're pleased to say Graystar has brought on Pride Masonry as a master mason for the project. And so they've been coordinating. We meet every 2 weeks and they've been coordinating through each of those complex details, including doing dry runs of some of these laurel arches in their shop. So it's been really sort of exciting on all fronts.
Oh, that's my last question. Thank you,
Okay.
thank you, Christian,
Okay.
Craig.
Further questions or comments this time? No more questions, Christian, you can have a seat. And then board comments.
Yeah, mock-up panel probably will take block of street.
I was thinking that as well. It's a very big mock-up band, for better or worse, probably for better.
And hopefully, you know, it's actually a shame of some of these mock-up panels that should be left alone and displayed. Anyway, I'm obviously impressed with the fact that we can hope to have a building like that in Charleston at this time. And I also impressed with the fact that, you know, the King Street is a main street, a lot of detailing there, but you didn't skimp on any other sites and elevations. Even so, some of the alleys are pretty narrow. You probably not going to totally appreciate all of the detail in there, but still they're there. So it's going back in history. That's how the buildings were approached. So it's really great to look at it. And obviously, there are so many details to work it out that it's not for us to kind of dig in. And, you know, interactions of different materials. Going back to Eddie's question about the height of that metal paneling on the back building. Actually, I think it's going to be with that height will be better because you get that optical illusion and everything will go down visually. So proportionally, it probably will be actually working well. Losing some of the parapets or actually a floor is reacting to, like I said, reacting to the narrow alley and proportions of visual proportions. So that works well. And I like the fact that those balconies, I guess, they develop really nicely with another level of detail. Bottom line, I'm looking forward. I don't know how long it will take you to build it. Looking forward to see it done. Colors are good, feminine or not. But we can relate to. Thank you.
Further board comments.
Well, I mean, I think it's a really exceptional building and the presentation, all the drawing, I mean, everything about it is just above and beyond. I hate to say what is expected, but I think you said something like that. So I guess my only concern is, you know, will it get pulled off? And I think a lot of your questions, Eddie, have to do with there's not as much detail as we're used to seeing at preliminary, and there is a lot of maybe vagueness in it. So I get it's hard to get that confidence that all of these amazing details can be pulled off, especially since I think the upper floors look like they're constructed out of wood. You know, that adds a level of complication. So I was a little disappointed in the reduction in glazing, but all of the other exceptional things, I think I'm willing to tuck that criticism in my pocket. I overlook it, but I think when this comes back for final, we absolutely do need to see you know, actual construction details. And I would even point out that it's expected for a building of this scale and magnitude to have real 3D drawings. I mean, everybody else does that. Not everybody else has, watercolors and hand drawn. So again, sometimes you're willing to overlook those types of expectations, but those 3D drawings really help us solve design challenges. They're a tool, not just a presentation technique. So that would be my feedback moving forward.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Mr. Bello.
Yeah, just to add on, first of all, exceptional as usual, wonderful detailing and approach and presentation, and it's great that the College of Building Arts is going to be involved. It's amazing. I do have a couple of concerns, not enough to, warrant deferral or anything like that, but I do think the change in the top is significant. I completely respect your reasoning because you went through the design and felt like it shouldn't be there. That makes sense, or those changes should be made. I think that's reasonable. But look, like Steve, I'm used to being able to see this in 3D. This is a big enough project where I know I should be able to see images to really understand what that impact would be. That's a huge project. And so I would like to see at the next level, I might not be here, but for the board, some true 3D, and the watercolors are beautiful, but those aren't accurate, truly accurate from what we're used to. And so I think that would put me at ease for how the top is really going to look, because I know this board has spent a lot of time thinking about the tops of buildings recently. Even your presentation talked about it. That's sort of the first thing you changed. Again, totally defer that that's maybe the right decision, but I don't have a good feel for what that impact is. And I do think it went from a lot of glazing to not so much, and a lot of cementitious panel, which is maybe not a big deal, but I don't know because I don't have good views of it. So that's my only sort of design concern. Just like Steve, though, I'm used to seeing a lot more detail for preliminary, and I understand you've got so many other things that just haven't gotten to yet. So I'm willing to let that go. But you were talking about praying before. I mean, God is in the details. I don't know if you can talk about me with this kind of stuff, but it will be successful based on the details. And you've already started with these wonderful brick. I keep doing this because of the craziness of the brick and the stone, but you've got handmade materials crashing into a factory made window. And where that window sits in the jamb is all about the success of this building. You've also got a lot of storefront material that is poly ash, which again, you guys have used it. I don't know what that is. It doesn't sound great. I'm sure it is if you guys use it, but it worries me because that's what I'm going to walk by and see. I'm going to see this wonderful brick, but then behind it, I'm going to have some other material that I'm not clear on, and I don't have any detail yet. And so that's my only worry. And the reason I have worry is because I don't have it yet. I have full confidence that you guys will solve it well. But I do think that is something that staff, well, you've got to turn it in for final anyway. But I think those are the things when you come back. I would like to see, some 3D views of from far off showing that, yeah, the top is great. Right, and really good information on how that ground level works from a public grounds point of view. So, but that sounds very critical. Overall, very, very impressed. So thank you.
The poly ash is actually kind of finished, looks like limestone. It's usable.
Does it have like a sheen or does it have a texture to it? Well, you can bring it in.
It should be, just bring the samples, but it's pretty material.
Not surprised.
But anyway, and I keep saying mock-up because
Right.
you cannot work it out anything here on the drawings. Close enough until you get mock-up. It's every single window, which is different with surrounding. It's a metal window on the top. I don't understand how the glazing goes into that metal surrounding because there's no sash.
Right.
Things like that, but mock-up. You will have a hard time to get all this, probably not a set like that for the mock-up panels.
Well, the mock-up will be key, but they got to draw it first, and that's what.
I know. Anyway,
The students are gonna just carve it out of stone. Oh,
Be great.
The project is excellent. I mean, quite simply, it's what Mayor Riley used to call a handsome building. It's what the city requires. And it's, as you said in your presentation, it should be setting the standard. And I think that it is. And in particular, setting the standard with the use of the students at the American College of the Building Arts. They're an incredible resource that more of our colleagues in the community should be using. It is going to be a hell of a mock-up, and I shared that because there were quite a few adjustments made in the drawings and in the lack of 3D renderings that I need to see impact and in context, and it's hard to do that in the watercolor drawings. When I was reviewing this earlier this week, I noticed that the removal of the parapets and also where the mechanicals were going to be hidden. And that's concerning to me because yes, it might be hidden by another building that is going to be there, but we have to look at the project singularly. And understand that if I'm coming from Bogart, if I'm going up St. Philip, if I'm coming from off the interstate, how is it going to look right now? And including those parapets, I think really finishes off the top of the building with a straight roof line. It only becomes like the other projects coming off the interstate. The other apartments and residences, and even the storage place. And it is flat roof lines. That's not interesting. And clearly, y'all have put an importance on design and technique and things not necessarily needing to be there to make it a more beautiful and impressive building. So I would ask y'all to especially study the Gabriel's Alley side of the building. It's not what you want to hear, but I think a deferral is probably in order for us to address the concerns of what my colleagues have shared. Do I think that it will be a standout approval at the next meeting? Absolutely. But we've gotten to the point before where we say that we expect this and we're going to see it at the next meeting, and it's not from this applicant ever, but it has come out where we expect it and we don't see it. I don't think we should set our own trap for ourselves the next time. But overall, I'm so impressed. Thank you.
I won't belabor things. I would ratify the comments of everyone who's spoken, particularly in regards to the concerns about constructability, but given the applicant's level of consideration that we've already seen and what they've spoken to in terms of Master Masons, College of the Building Arts, what they've physically provided us, which we normally don't get at this stage, even if we would like to have some more detailed drawings and 3D renderings. I have every confidence that the applicant will get the details right, and also understand that it's iterative in the sense that this building is so complex and there's so much going on that while we have design elements like this in front of us, some of the other things are literally being engineered as we speak. What I would say is this, and again, this is not a threat or a warning to the applicant, it would just be a statement of how we've seen this in the past, is that obviously the mock-up is going to be very important. The applicant is going to be held to what is presented in what has been presented here being reflected in that mock-up. And that the applicant's choice to move ahead with a very complex, neo-traditional, very thoughtful presentation. Value engineering, it kills the project. It kills everything about this, because the success of the project really is in its complexity. And so in any form of value engineering other than actual constructability issues is probably going to be poorly received. But that being said, I'm very comfortable with the applicant moving forward at this stage as they work through these challenges. The other thing I would say is that if this project is pulled off successfully, if the constructability issues are addressed and it reflects what we see here this evening, I think to the point of several people, there will be, in fact, a new standard in multifamily, and the age-old excuse of we can't get that, or we can't build that, or they don't make that anymore, or we can't find those kinds of craftsmen or masons or engineers, that argument is going to go out the door. It's been very frustrating in the past because we didn't have something so fine to point to be able to say, yes, in fact, it can be built. And yes, in fact, it can be built with all the considerations that go into development that don't have anything to do with aesthetics. If this is executed, it will set a new standard, and many excuses we have heard in the past will no longer be excuses. But that, based on the applicant's presentation, is binding on the applicant, because if it fails, then it will be an example of everyone being able to say, well, they said they could do it, but we can't. So in the same spirit that the applicant has been very aspirational about this whole project, don't take your foot off the gas. Okay.
It's applicant and owner contractors.
That's right. That's
Budget.
there are lots of things that we all know and that are not part of the record of this meeting that go into building a building like this based on what we've been presented, the aesthetics, the architecture, craftsmanship, or materials are all exceptional and appropriate. And if it does get pulled off, that's going to require cooperation from a lot of other people than the design team. But I think you can do it. And that's what we're looking forward to down the road with both the mock-up and the final. Further discussion or a motion?
Well, I want to ask Seton something. So you floated the idea of a deferral, but would you be okay with an approval? First of all, they've got to come back with details that are clear. They've got to figure them out. But with an approval with further study and stronger views, better illustrations, 3D illustrations, that's not typically required for final of the top floor specifically. Keeping them, knowing that that's sort of still up in the air a little bit. I'm pretty confident that you guys are going to be showing us something that's right, but don't have it yet. But I would be okay if that happens at the next level.
Are you suggesting a restudy of the roof line?
I was just going to say further study instead of restudy, because again, I tend to defer to the architectural team if I can tell they've studied a lot already, but I don't have the drawings to fully understand. So because of that, I mean, I'm giving them credit for all the work they've done.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I am too, and I would be amenable to that motion. The other thing what I would add is, since we think the applicant design team can provide it, is the specific elements that you have spoken to, specific design and engineering elements to make our approval conditional on getting the sheets, the documents that support those as a preliminary, which would include some windows, sashes, some of the storefront elements.
So they have to do anyway, but I would say when you come back for the presentation, and you guys present how you want, but the focus for those details would be that street level view, the impact of what we will all walk down and see. It's important what happens above, but the most important thing is what you can go up and touch. So those types of things. But again, that's part of, I would just say, as you focus on the presentation, that would be key to me. So I forgot how it's going to make motion. I will move for preliminary approval with further study of the upper floors and parapet elements, supplemented with three-dimensional renderings. And staff comments, yeah.
So the motion, Mr. Bello, would be for preliminary approval with further study of the upper floor elements and parapet. And incorporating board and staff comments and having 3D drawings or renderings as discussed in our
Yes.
comments. Okay, is there a second to that motion? Second from Ms. Sobchak, in proper order. Mr. Ramos, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Bello,
Yeah, in favor.
Ms. Sobchak,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Brown,
Yay in favor.
and myself getting in favor. Thank you to the applicant.
Thank you.
Good. We're looking forward to
We got work to do.
good things going ahead. That's okay. All right, very good.
Thank you for keeping momentum on the project. We have a whole team of artisans that are graduating, they're planning to get to work, so we gotta keep, we are gonna.
So thank you to those who visited us, faculty, staff, students, most importantly, of the College of the Building Arts. Thank you for being here, and hope this is a springboard to you doing more work in the community.
Maybe next time you'll get a feature on Channel 4.
Thanks for bringing those in.
Thank you.
Very heavy.
Very nice.
That's how they start.
Yeah,
Then, you know. Europe.
Scott, do you have some hand carved elements to go in the landscape? We might have a hard time for approving after that presentation.
You know,
All right, very good. Had some members of the public and the applicant cleared the room, but we're now prepared to go on to the related agenda item number 4.
Okay, agenda item number 4 is 635 and 649 King Street and 244 and 230 St. Philip Street. This one is new related construction in the old and historic district, and the applicant is requesting site improvements surrounding the development of 4 multifamily residential buildings. While you are looking at the context, which you should be very familiar with now, just a reminder that the hardscape and site improvements have been previously presented as part of the overall presentation for Courier Square Phase 2. However, these are now being reviewed in their own right and shall be considered in coordination with the surrounding buildings of Courier Square Phase 2.
All right, the applicant's presentation.
So thank you. My name is Scott Parker with Design Works, and with me this evening is Ariane Wolf, one of my colleagues at Design Works. And she is the project manager for this project, and she will take you through the presentation this evening. So Ariane, yours.
Hi, I'm Ariane Wolf with Design Works. We're excited to have the opportunity to walk you all through this site plan. So everyone just saw the previous presentation. I'm sure you're familiar with the context. The site plan is for building 1 as well as buildings 2, 3, and 4, which have received prior preliminary approval from the BIR. You can go to the next slide. So this is the overall site plan, and I will be showing you some closer plans as well as elevations as I move through the presentation. But just wanted to give you the overview here. I'm sure you're all familiar with this from prior presentations. We have St. Philip Street to the west, Line Street to the north, and King Street on the east. We have 4 buildings on the site, and the site is really, has considered how people inhabit this space and how they move through the block and through these spaces. We have the pedestrian Gabriel's Alley on the south side of the block, moving past Oak Park on St. Philip Street and along building 1 between the building that was just presented and future Liberty development to the south. On the west side of building 1 is Ackerman's Garden, which Christian spoke to a little bit in his presentation. That is a more private alley space. Off of Line Street, we have the main vehicular access for the site on St. James Court. And then we have 2 dining courtyards along King Street between buildings 1 and 2, and then along Gabriel's Alley. I will take y'all through, you can move to the next slide. This shows the prior plan that was presented to the BIR. You can see there has not been a significant change in the overall concepts of circulation to the site. We've continued to refine our materials and what these garden spaces look like. But overall, it has remained consistent. You can move to the next slide. Thank you. So this is some elevations along St. Philip Street. On the top half of the page, this is the elevation of building 3. This is a rather simple landscape here. We have some low brick knee walls to create some garden spaces between the porches. We've really just worked with the articulation of the building there. On the bottom half of the page, you'll see an elevation of Oak Park. So you'll see the transplanted live oak here. This is a 37-inch grand oak that's currently on the site, and it's being transplanted to this location. And I will show some photos of that in a moment, but the work has started on that tree. The company that moves the tree has started to remove the asphalt. Currently, it's in the parking lot to remove the asphalt around the root ball, fertilize it, get some irrigation on it, do some root pruning. So we're very excited about that. It looks like May or June of next year is when that tree move should happen. But the landscaping around the park is a relatively light touch, mostly in deference to that tree, trying to make sure that it stays healthy and keep people from walking too closely to the root ball of that tree. But also making sure that this is a public park that's, you know, in some ways a gift to the neighborhood, and just making sure that people can really experience that. If you could move to the next slide. These are the Line Street elevations. Again, a relatively simple streetscape here. We have crepe myrtles as our street trees. We do have a dining arcade between building 2 and the exit from St. James Court. So you'll see that in the elevation. If you could move to the next slide. And then King Street. This is a continuation of the standard King Street sidewalks with the palmettos and the granite cobbles. And we have 2 moments here for dining and to engage people and bring them into the site. Gabriel's Alley on the south side. And then on the north side of building 1, there's a larger courtyard that is intended to have some dining, as well as circulation to and from the parking. I do just want to note that Gabriel's Alley, of course, I'm sure you're all aware, but it is intended to be constructed on both Gray Star's property as well as Liberty's. So what we're showing here is just half of that, but it is being designed as a greater whole, but this project is just doing half of it. So just to clarify that. If you could move to the next slide. So we have our images of hardscape materials. We have tabby concrete throughout the project. We have pine haul brick pavers. We're suggesting the rumbled cocoa. We have a limited portion of bluestone in some key places. We have plantation mix in some of the garden spaces. And then we have scored broom finished concrete with brick bands in the drive port. If you could move to the next slide. So this is a plan view that shows Oak Park. This is really, you know, this whole space is about the tree. There's also a beautiful entrance to the building here as well, but it's, you know, from us, it's really about the tree and making sure that people get to experience this tree. So we have a gravel path through there with some benches placed under the tree for people to enjoy. I will note that Ackerman's Garden is the semi-private space on this project. So that is gated. That is for residents of building 4 and residents of the townhomes in building 1 only. So you'll see some gates there. If you could move on to the next slide, please. And this is going a little bit further north. You'll see there's a moment for this really lovely courtyard. This is centered on building 1. So where that laurel arch is occurring on the 5th level, this courtyard is happening on the ground plane. We also have, moving a little bit further north, we have a small garden space here. This is again for residents to enjoy. I do want to note that we have worked closely with all of the neighbors about what materials are whether we have walls or fences. And so you will see both wooden fences as well as masonry walls on this project. And that has really just been in conversation with the neighbors and what works best with their properties. If you could move on to the next, thank you. So this is St. James Court. In here, you know, we have some entrances off of building 3. We have the dining along building 2, and then building 1 on the south. That is the main, you know, east-west connector for people that are maybe living in building 3, moving to King Street. You'll see that sidewalk along the frontage of building 1. And it's also the main entrance and exit for pedestrians as well as vehicles, but pedestrians using that parking garage. So making sure that that is a strong connection to King Street. If you could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this shows that connection a little bit more strongly. This is a moment between buildings 1 and 2, where again, all of the parking for the whole project is occurring in building 1. And so the residents will park there, but then move through the site to their units. And so how do we create these special moments as they're going from their car to their home? So this is a moment where we can create a really lovely little Charleston garden that people are using every day as they go to their car. You could go to the next slide. And then this is Gabriel's Alley again. Again, this is only rendered as half of the whole. And you know, we've at TRC, they wanted to make sure that we didn't show more than what was, you know, going to be built. And so I just want to make it clear that this is half. So we have an alley of these palmetto trees. There will be, you know, it will be a full alley, not just a half. But there is this continued corridor through Gabriel's Alley, but at the front along King Street, creating some spaces adjacent to the retail area for dining to occur. And we are ensuring that there's 4 feet of path on this portion of the property. Eventually it will be 8. And you can move on to the next slide. So this is the final, I have an appendix with the full construction documents attached. I will note the lighting plan is in those construction documents, and I'll speak to that just briefly. We are concerned, or the client is, you know, wants to ensure that there is this is well lit. I know that sometimes you know, spaces, especially gardens, if they're closed at night, you maybe don't want, you know, too much lighting in there, but especially Gabriel's Alley, as this is going to be an area that's a public passageway to ensure that we have sufficient lighting in there for safety. So we are suggesting using pole lights in there. And there are some images on the final page of our presentation that show some images and examples from parks like Hampton Park throughout the city.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Any questions from the board or staff at this time of Ms. Wolf?
I have one question. On page 13, can you go back 1? So, and I understand this is half of the LA.
Yes.
But so when I'm looking at those, what are those 5 trees there? And you've got a brick band. So would that be a double brick band in the middle, or would that go away and it feels like one big space? When you flip the other side?
At this time, it would probably be a double brick band, but we are still coordinating.
Do you want it to be a double brick band? That's my question. Right down the middle?
Ideally, no.
Okay.
But we're trying to figure out what the timing is on between the 2 projects and what does it look like today before it's built as a whole? And does that will that change a little bit? Likely.
Okay.
Well, and I have to say, the applicant, this is a very practical constraint with the other committees that they've had to come through. I understand, and I think Ms. Wolf's representation that that we're gonna get the other half of valet and it's gonna match. But she can't guarantee that now. I understand.
The bicycle can drive.
Right down there. That's right. Nice. Very good. Further questions from the board or staff at this time?
In St. James Court, what sorts of trees are you looking to have line the drive-through?
Sorry, say
What
that.
sorts of trees are you looking to have line St. James Court?
We have a variety. If you go back a few slides, the larger and lighter green are oak trees. And then we also have crepe myrtles that are the smaller trees, as well as some evergreens.
And also the connection between St. James Court at building 2 and 1. Looks like there's considerably more hardscaping than in the original plan.
Yes, that is really just in relation to the buildings and as those buildings have evolved over time. So the rooms that are on the south portion of building 2 that are closer to the drive court, those are primarily like fire access, utilities, things like that. So there does need to be more access to those rooms than I think we were originally planning for. The dining courtyard though at King Street, we have tried to keep that a little bit. That one's a little bit more consistent, whereas this one has responded to a lot of utilities.
Thank you.
You mentioned the fencing and wooden fencing.
We do have wooden fencing. So on this drawing, there is a wooden fence on the side, the entrance, so the western side, adjacent to that property owner. There is a masonry wall around the transformers.
So kind of in this urban setting, is it wood? Okay,
I believe so.
You seem to indicate that that was in conjunction with what the neighbor had
Mhm.
decided was.
Yes. And there's also another portion that's maybe back to one slide. On the northern portion of building 4, there's a wooden fence there as well. And that-
who will have a control over the design? Because it's-
So are
I
you,
There are details in the drawings, if you would want to advance to those.
But you're referencing the other property owner that's there, like their
you guys.
Their
are
privacy
ultimately
fence?
Building these fences,
Well,
correct?
it's-
Yes,
Yes.
yes, they're in our, I apologize, Lawrence, it's back maybe. It's back closer to,
LS 503.
So the one edge along St. James Court that you're talking about, there's a number of existing trees on that private property. With the root right there along the property line. And the property owner was really reticent to have a masonry wall constructed along that edge.
You're talking about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the mountains?
the bottom portion of that slide is the wooden fence.
So that reflects site conditions and what the neighbor thought was appropriate. Is what you have, and you're not gonna destroy their landscape. Imagine that,
Especially their trees.
developer being a thoughtful neighbor.
What
Uh,
kind of? How deteriorates and things like that. In this very urban setting, it's. I understand it. You also can probably span between. Don't have to go into the ground, but span
Right.
between the colors, posts and things like that and have it. I don't know, I'm sure. Caution.
It concerns you, yeah.
Yeah.
Further board questions at this time?
The
Mr. Rama.
tree that's being transplanted, and how the roots have to be protected, is that forever? Like at some point, will people be able to go underneath it?
Yes and no. For several years, people need to stay off the root ball. And so if you go back to the site plan, you will see what we at this point in time think is the extent of the root ball. They will confirm that as they do more work. But the path is actually outside of the root ball. So people will be able to experience being under the canopy of the tree. But they will not, we hope that they won't really ever necessarily be directly under the tree.
Ever seen kids before?
Those kids live around the corner. Be over there.
Further board questions at this time? Applicant could have a seat for the moment. Is there any member of the public wishing to be heard on this agenda item? Seeing none, city staff comments or recommendations?
Well, first of all, staff noticed a couple of changes on buildings 2 and 3 as they were depicted in the imagery review from their previous approvals. I believe that's just a drawing issue. Any building revisions will need to be brought to staff's attention and may require board review of significant. Okay, and a few conditions of approval. We have already begun talking about this, but number 1, wood fencing is proposed at the north end of building 4 and at locations against St. James Court. When I reviewed it, it looked like also 2 sides of the transformer yard. Wood fencing is not atypical for St. Philip Street or Line Street and is residential in quality, but it does seem substandard in comparison to the buildings of Courier Square Phase 2. City alternatives to the wood fencing proposed, I think at a minimum of where they're not touching a residential property that has a desire for wood fencing. Number 2, at St. James Court, study the placement of the brick bands to coordinate symmetrically around the vehicular opening at building 1, which is taller and a highly emphasized portion. 3, we study the brick banding at other elements on the St. James Court facade to see if better coordination between the horizontal ground elements and vertical building elements of building 1 can be achieved. 4, at Gabriel's Alley against building 1, restudy the pavement joints to coordinate with or around the building elements. We sort of touched on that we're only getting half of that alley, but you're working with your facade, so I got that. 5, of the proposed pathway, pedestrian scaled pole and landscape lighting all seem appropriate for their locations. Visible light fixtures attached to the trees are not preferred, and an alternate fixture should be considered. 6, wrought iron will be used for gate elements on building 1. Metal gates and fencing with a different design are proposed for the site and will be in close proximity. Same level of quality applied to the adjacent buildings at Courier Square should be applied to the site element. And last, visible metal grates and specially paved areas should be painted to match the adjacent material. And then the recommendation is preliminary approval with staff conditions and board comments.
Very good. The applicant has a chance to respond. Any response? Nope. Okay, very good. Board discussion and a potential vote.
Well, first I want to say I didn't went around for conceptual, but I really appreciate just the whole approach to the site, all these connections and pathways. It's really strong and it's Charleston. I'm not as bothered by using wood fencing. I do think it could be dressed up a little bit. Don't know how to do that with the top band and the bottom band painted Charleston green. So I would be fine with wood if it were just a little more, just a nicer looking wood fence. My question about the band in the middle, I get that you're only building half of it now, but I hate the idea of when the whole thing's built, you've got the stripe down the middle. I think it ruins your design. So I don't know how to solve that. Just put that on the record. That just bothers me because it's just not as strong. The only other, the staff comments, and it might be that I just don't understand it as well, but aligning joints and things with building elements, I think sometimes that really works and sometimes it doesn't, because as you walk, you're not necessarily looking at columns, you're looking at the sidewalk, and if it's an odd spacing, I think it might take away from the strength of the design. So I would semi-agree with the city staff comments, but I would kind of defer to the designer to sort of work through that. But otherwise, I think the design is excellent. Excited to see it.
Further board comments.
So I live right by here, and so I'm really excited about, walking over here. I know Mr. Courtney can be kind of stingy with exterior lights. So maybe we could be a little more liberal. So it is a nice, safe environment to walk in the evening. I was advocating that same thing.
We were saying that today.
Good. We're on the same page.
Just picking on you. So that was one of my comments. You know, the building, as we just saw, is so exceptional that and especially at grade, that maybe you would expect for some of that kind of high design to occur. I don't know where that occurs, if it's on brick columns, that there's finials or. You know, I don't know, I don't want to advocate, you know, what they should do, but I think like the wood fence comment. I think is kind of geared towards that maybe some of the quality could be stepped up a notch. Like, there's a lot of concrete. And it'll be tabby concrete, and that is a Charleston thing, but I don't know if it's as much a downtown Charleston thing, it's a low country thing. But when we think about the great alleys and sidewalks that we know and love, I don't know that many of them are tabby concrete. So, you know, maybe there's an opportunity to bring in some more pavers or stone. But all in all, it's, you know, it's going to be a great sequence of spaces.
I totally agree about Debbie. I'm going back to wood fencing again, and you know, maybe when what is that, St. Philip Street, which is more residential, is fine, but interior wise, it's such a great courtyard and things like that. So there's no wood anywhere else but on the fence. So it's, I don't know, it's just got to be. So through maybe a little bit more.
But you would agree with the staff note on other consideration, okay, all right, good. Further board comment? There's no need to belabor what's been said. I think some extra level of refinement is warranted here, given the buildings that we're talking about, further concerns about the fencing. I think in terms of the general layout and materials, we've heard all good things. It may be just the proportions then that be a little tweaking, but nothing that would prevent a preliminary approval, I don't think. Further board comments?
Let's look at something other than a crepe myrtle. That's crepe myrtles. I get it. I know why we like them, but this, for such an impressive building, I think that there's equally an opportunity to have some. Now I realize that the spacing is limited, but crepe myrtles are so redundant.
Well, just briefly, well, I'll tell it to you later. That's good about Colonial Lake, but
They
it's
bring
good
color
observation.
as well.
They bring color, yes. So
For a
does-
period of time. you know.
And that they are above all hardy. So we'll discuss.
Yeah, I think about Charleston Place and the revisions that they had for the landscaping in there. And so, well, it's gonna be beautiful for a week. Yeah, there's another opportunity.
Further-
Comment.
Further board comments this time? Is there a motion?
Make a motion for approval with board and staff comments.
So the motion is for a preliminary approval incorporating board and staff comments. Is there a second?
Would that be details to staff? That they need to come back?
I would suggest it come back.
Yeah, I was assuming they would come back.
Okay.
Yep,
All right, I'll
for
second.
final.
Okay, it's seconded, so it's in proper order. Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote on the motion?
And
Mr. Brown,
Yeah, in favor.
Mr. Ramos,
You in favor?
Mr. Bello?
Yeah, in favor.
Myself, be in favor. Thank you to the applicant. We'll look forward to the further refinement. Fine. Thank you. Very good. Agenda item number 5, number 2 Hanson Street. Mr. Bello will take off his cap as
I have to
as
recuse.
adjudicator.
Very odd.
I do.
Scene change.
Okay.
do you need the table, Eddie?
I don't know.
So they could gather.
They're right, I cleared off.
You ready?
Agenda item number 5.
Okay, number 5 is 2 Anson Street, new construction, 3.5 story height district in the old and historic district. Let's see what context we have. The applicant is requesting preliminary approval also. This is the location on Anson Street with Market just to the south. And the condition of the site today.
Mr. Bello.
Move for approval. Very odd, sorry about that. They dire needs, they needed me. Eddie, huh? Eddie Bella with Bella Garrett's Architects, also on the architect team here is Melissa and Katie Thorpe. Raven, I will go through this fairly quickly. We're going for preliminary approval. Some of the board comments last time, when we got conceptual approval earlier this year, were fairly minor, and I will address those as we go through. So next slide, Lawrence, please. I think everybody's pretty familiar with the site. I think the key takeaway here is that we are situated as a true infill project. We're situated in between 2 existing buildings. Site plan. Again, you can see Anson Street there on the left, and an existing structure to the north, and one to the south. This is a difficult site in that this is our really only service area. So we've got a service alley there. As I talked about last time when we presented, there's a Cooper Hotel here. They're completely separate structures, but they do share automobile access to our garage here, and then an exit to Raper's Alley, which none of that's changed since conceptual, just kind of pointing that out. We'll skip this one. Next slide. Again, site plan. I'll talk about this a little bit more in detail, but this building is built right on the adjacent property line. That's the Anson restaurant. We've got some challenges with that, and I'll talk about that. On the ground floor, the public facing side is all public space, restaurant, lobby, and all the garage. None of this is really changed. Next slide. So we've got the conceptual floor plans and the current floor plans. If it's okay with the board, I'm going to skip through those. Nothing substantial has changed since conceptual that affects BAR. It's a hotel, it's a fairly straightforward floor plan. So unless the board has questions, I'm just going to go through that. Thank you, Lawrence. Next slide. Just go to the inspiration. Okay. Just to remind everybody, when we presented this at conceptual, we talked about some of the inspiration behind the design, and first thing we always do is look at the context. Anson Borough is one of the character defining features of Anson Borough is all the masonry structures, beautiful, handsome brick structures. So we were drawn to that for our building. Next slide. And then looking a little further, the detailing of that brick, the coursing of how these buildings work, some of the treatments around the windows. Next slide. And again, a little bit more looking at the detailing that we don't want to replicate, but we want to kind of inform how our design might work. Next slide. And then just like everywhere else in Charleston, there's wrought iron, but there's definitely good bit. Anson Borough, it's very, I don't know, Anson Borough is a very compact neighborhood, and so there's a lot of wrought iron. So we're very inspired by it. I've presented all this as conceptual, but just as a reminder. Next slide. Okay, so the front facade, again, this is mostly a facade study. Facing Anson. So this hasn't really changed much from conceptual, but just to remind everybody, we set up a very formal facade with 2 sort of wings that are set back. There used to be a long time ago 2 tenement buildings on site. So we put this reveal in the middle for one to sort of recall that, but also to give it a little bit more Charleston proportions. The materials are very simple. It's all brick and then aluminum, metal. One of the things we talked about last time was this decorated screens that are laser cut based on the pattern that we came up with. And there's a sample there, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But that's a direct sort of inspiration from that wrought iron work. And I'll explain that a little more. The brick has some detailing in it that is also drawing from Hanson Road. Next slide. Previous and proposed, it's kind of hard to tell the difference. Next slide, Lawrence. One of the board comments last time was this parapet here needed to be a little more pronounced, which we agreed with, and we did study that, and we did make it more pronounced. It's much more decorative. There's a lot more detail to it, and also it's a little bit larger. We didn't want to compete too much with this lower parapet. The lower parapet is intentionally low because we wanted to have the building feel a little bit lower, so we've got a much stronger parapet there. But again, we did want to have a nice parapet at the top. A couple of things to point out. If you remember, in the Ansonbro images, there's a lot of Flemish bond. So our building is Flemish bond. We also have a sort of an extra layering of texture in that sort of more contemporary way. Every so often there is a brick that's outboard of the masonry wall. Right now it's 3/8 of an inch. The idea is that it wouldn't be as obvious as this. We have to show it this way so you can read it, but it's something that you would see as you walk up, just the richness, and oh, there's a little bit more detail, but we don't want it to feel checkerboard. So that's something we presented last time. I think when we get to the mock-up, we'll really play with where that brick ought to be. But that's one of the things I wanted to point out. And then you can see this pattern has changed a little bit from last time. Well, let's go to the next one. Okay, so you can see the views here. Conceptually, preliminary, not huge difference other than just a little bit more development. Another thing that I forgot to point out, so on every window, we've got a very thin aluminum surround that for the brick 2 inches. The idea with that is to give a very, very crisp, elegant sort of definition to the window. It's a detail that's clearly contemporary, but it does sort of announce the windows. It also provides a little more shade and shadow for the windows so they pop out. That same detail comes around the storefront and is out, and then the panels are actually recessed 3 inches. So those panels are 5 inches back from that outer sort of frame. Next slide. Some of the details, we spent a lot of time on the detail. Again, this is a good sort of illustration of that brick pattern. But in my mind, this looks way too obvious. That's not the intent, but again, that's just to show how it works. These details here, this is a window detail, and it shows that sort of surround the windows. The other drawing is the lower cornice, and that would all be sort of this black aluminum. Next, just another rendering. As we developed this, we kept updating the renderings. You can see the screen a little better in these renderings. Next slide. So here's a good view of how that screen works. So we've got details for that. We also use the screen for the balcony railings, and we've got mechanical up there on the right that we're sort of hiding behind that screen. Slide. There's some wall sections, one's through the garage entry and one's the storefront. Next slide. Okay, talking a little bit more about the screen. Some of the comments last time were study the screen. Should it be a little bit more that you could see a little bit more of that sort of scrolling pattern? So just as a reminder, we literally we took a photograph. I did it, which is crazy because I'm drawing stuff. But we created a scroll that we then stretched and pulled, and then we overlaid that with another pattern. And we did this at conceptual. The idea is we don't want it to feel too representational, we want to recall it. That original pattern had a more orthogonal layering. And we never really were sure about that. I know I was a little concerned about it. We got a sample made and we all realized we didn't like it. So we got another one made and we restudied that design. So now we have sort of this layer of circles, which I think works really well. One thing, circles relate more to wrought ironwork. We see that all over Charleston, but it also ends up creating this sort of diamond pattern if you look at it a different way. So you've got a real layering of forms, but then you still see that sort of fluid Charleston ironwork. So we're super excited about that. Another thing that's important about these panels, all the fasteners will be concealed. So you'll read them as individual panels, which was intentional, but you won't see the connections. And again, these are set back 5 inches from that sort of frame. So they'll be always this sort of pronounced state. So that's a good, so the scale of this is correct. But of course, the panel, I think it's 3 feet by 5 or 6. So much larger, but the size of the holes and everything is the same. And the finish is the same. Next slide. This was one of the comments from staff and board, just the drop off for the auto access, the part of the building and thought about with material. So we continued the break inside and have nice papers that should go into the valley drop off. Next slide. This shows sort of the only design change from last time. So I talked about, so here's Anson Street. This is the adjacent building. It's being built, it's existing right now. It's on the property line. As we got into it, we realized you can't put brick here. It's not possible to construct it. So, and you can see in this view, and it's just where it's going to be a hard thing to construct. So next slide. So this is what we presented out of time. Is that it?
Nope. I think that's something to do with the record.
This is what we showed last time. We realized you cannot build this. So we're showing a block wall. If we can get stucco in there, that's good. But our solution is to provide some type of aluminum screen, and that because it's a space about this big. And that would not be visible from the public right away, that wall. So that's new from last time. Again, part of the construction as we started developing the project. Next slide. I'm almost done. Here's a section through the north facade, which the north facade has zinc panels, as does the southern facade. Neither of those facades are very close to the public right of way. You have to, they're behind buildings and sort of offset, but the intention with the zinc was to have a very simple, kind of quiet material, but very high quality. Next slide. This is the alley elevate from the existing proposed. Again, there's a building right in front of this. It's only about 5 feet wide, so it'd be tough to, you would never see this. You would see some of it. Next slide. And just some details for how all that works. Again, spent a lot of time solving some of the detail. You see the decorative screens, which will hide those mechanical units. These are the only place where we have mechanical units that are outside. Everything else is inside. Next slide. Just some more details. This in the middle, one of the staff comments, I think, or 4 comments, was to study how that sort of zinc terminates. So we've got a very simple cap up there. The windows are very, very simple. There's no sort of decoration, just a simple punch. Next slide. This is the east facade proposed prior and now. This will not be visible from the street because there'll be a new building right next to it. They're being built at the same time. Next slide. Sections, go through these slides. Next slide. Just a view showing how the panels will work, how the surrounds for the windows will work. The canopy is this all aluminum with a sort of a bull nose. Slide. This shows sort of that reveal in the center of the building with that sort of sawtooth detail. Which we're pretty excited about. Again, that's showing the pattern of the bricks that are protruding. The intention is for them not to be that pronounced, but this is. Next slide. Here's the canopy detail. Next slide. More canopy detail, sort of how the jam works and the soffit. Next slide. This shows the balcony. And one of the things we realized here, this needs to meet code. So those spheres are less than 4 inches, so that all works out nicely. But I think this will be work really well. The canopy balcony will have a aluminum wrap, so that'll all be this dark black. Next slide. And there's the cornice. This was, again, one of the board comments to have a more pronounced cornice. So you can see we've got one of the bricks is out of 3.5 inches. There's insets to create shadow. Those are header forces. So there's this is not a running bond. And then we've got this really nice, much heavier that's the cast now. So we think that's a good solution to sort of topping off the building. Next slide. And the details here. One has to do with the louvers. Next slide. Some other zinc details. Next slide. I think we're getting close. And then the materials, like I said, pretty simple palette. We wanted to have a light color brick. The buildings on either side are pretty strong colors. One's bright purple, which could be painted, but we wanted this to stand out in a more subtle way, and like the really light color of the brick contrasting with the real dark color of the metal. And I think that's the last slide. Next one. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions.
Any questions from the board at this time, Mr. Bennett?
One question. Can you go to sheet BAR 20? I'm the glazing police tonight, so the very subtle change, but the windows before were about, I don't know, 8 to 12 inches taller on floors 2 and 3. They were slightly more vertical. And then they were a little smaller on floor 4, which is kind of what you would see in a Charleston building. But now they're all the same, not quite as vertical. Is that something you could go back to?
Yes, that's a mistake. I didn't realize that, Steve. These are supposed to be smaller than this. I did not pick up that. I don't know if it's changed.
I think with the study of coursing, the proportions with the windows and the brick, we assumed it would be the same, but we could make that modification.
It's not supposed to. The original is supposed to be the same. That was an intentional thing. If you walk up, that's a Charleston thing. That you would see smaller windows. That's a miscommunication. They're not supposed to. I didn't miss that.
So that would not in fact be a change from conception.
No, we want them to be smaller. We'll figure it out. Okay.
Understood.
Well, I think it's that the other ones got smaller. Floors 2 and 3 got a little smaller.
I see what you're saying. Yes, so
So they
these
should
should
be
be bigger.
elongated.
These would be the same. That's right. I think we want to figure out how to get the windows back to where they were conceptually.
That's my only question.
Further board questions at this time?
Above the coffee shop, or the proposed coffee shop, that's planning to be not a balcony at the roof line. That's going to be mechanical screening.
Yes.
Further board questions at this time?
Is a mechanical screen, but it's see-through.
Yeah, but yes, but it is I don't know if we have a good roof plan, but the units are not directly adjacent. They're pushed back a little bit. So I think from your perspective, you won't see them as well as you would if you're.
And that obviously it's what 3G, whatever. But actual sizing will be like this, or
Yes, Yeah, that's what I was trying to explain. So this size is not gonna change. This one. But
You're
the
just
actual
adding-
panel,
It'll be a 6 foot long panel instead of a
Yeah,
3 foot
adding
long panel.
elements.
so I think
Okay.
it'll. I think it'll be stronger actually because you'll get more.
Yeah, on the balcony.
Right. For sure, because it's railing.
Yeah, and then you clear 4 inch.
We realized that. We got it too.
Further board questions this time, comments? Hear none. Any member of the public wish to speak on this agenda item? Yes, sir.
I'm Ty Hamlin, and we own the property 241, 243 East Bay Street, which is obviously very close in proximity to this. And I realize this is the Board of Architectural Review, but I'm wondering if we could show the slide that presents the site.
Sure.
So if I understand Mr. Bello correctly, the intention is to have the garage for this hotel discharge its automobiles into the adjacent hotel to be built. Which is obviously it's easier for me to do it this way. So as I understand it, then therefore they would come in from Anson Street. But we don't see anything over here in terms of where they're being discharged, or am I mistaken?
Well, that's not being reviewed tonight, so we're not showing that.
Okay. So I think that is the plan for them to be discharged into this other adjacent building, and we're opposed to that. The other comment that I would make is that this egress alley that's shown here, is that to be maintained?
I'll answer the question. when it's not.
Yeah, but that's fine. Yeah, the applicant does respond right now.
Yeah, everything's gonna be maintained, so no problem.
So we don't show a connection in terms of this discharging into the adjacent building to be built, which I think is a subject matter for this body to consider.
Actually, it's not. The board to consider that is called the Technical Review Committee, which may have already made binding recommendations in that regard. And so to the extent, Mr. Hanlon, you have inquiry regarding traffic circulation or what the city's requiring in terms of that access or the means of discharge, that would be lodged with the Technical Review Committee.
It's also future project, so it's not.
Well, it's not subject to our purview because it's a
I
future
know,
project, but in terms of what exists and what traffic circulation has been allowed, that's controlled by TRC.
Understood. The egress alley that's shown here, what is, I don't understand what the point of that is. Is it for pedestrian egress or?
There's an exit there that requires people to get to a public right of way. Remove the trash.
Also trash. So.
And also above that, we have windows, so we have to put the building off of the property line to have windows.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but the operation here also handles their trash off of that currently, off of that portion of land there that is now part of the parking lot.
Well, this is not a VAR issue, but right now the adjacent property owner is using our client's property for their trash and their access. So that's something that the VAR doesn't have to worry about, but that's something that our client is going to have to solve with the adjacent property owner. Again, adjacent property owner has been using our client site for many years. They actually have a dumpster on his site. And so as we work through the construction, that's something that we're gonna have to figure out a solution. No, this is BAR related, but for your information.
Nothing else. I'm sorry to take your time. Thank you.
That's okay, Mr. Hamlin. Thank you for coming and getting what information came from our board. We do in fact have some limits on our jurisdiction.
Just to clarify on the drive issue, of course, this went through BZA for all of those issues. Drive access, how the valet works, how many parking spaces. We have a traffic study. We went through BZA once. We also went through again with zoning staff to confirm that everything is with zoning. So I don't want to, short with it, but we've already done this. So at preliminary, we're focusing on the architect, to be honest.
And materials.
Yes.
And color palette. Very good. Further public comment on this agenda item this time? Seeing none. City staff comments or recommendations?
The proposed preliminary design of the building at 2 Anson Street indicates additional refinements detailing proposed interior materials and colors and addresses staff and board comments from the previous meeting. Proposed materials and colors strike an elegant balance which properly reflect the design of this striking and well-ordered building. A few conditions for approval. The grade changes in the sidewalk do not appear in the present condition that I can see when I'm other. Grade elevation changes to be carefully coordinated between all entities and carefully handled to minimize or to gradually expose the curbing. 2, the exposed curbing should be painted the generalized brick mortar blended color so as to be minimally visually minimized. 3, consider mortar joint profile in order to achieve the textured surface as depicted with a mortar color that reflects the brick. 4, considering the likelihood that development on the adjacent property will occur and will occur soon, staff suggests an update from the applicant on the status. Board may wish to consider a conditional approval on the exposed CMU wall at the west elevation. And staff's recommendation is preliminary approval with staff conditions and board comments and final review by staff for permit drawings.
Any response from that?
One, I think we of course will keep everyone updated on the next building. We're planning to complete work soon. The one thing I wanted to point out, and I think I would request that we sort of study that in the field. What she's talking about is the front. We didn't realize it until we got into the front elevation. There's a fairly significant grade change from north to south where it goes down. And so what we're showing is an exposed concrete for that. Sort of the brick stops and it goes down. The exposed concrete, will be right up against the concrete sidewalk. And I think I'd like to see concrete, but considering that may not be very good quality, may stucco that or something. But I don't know that it would be easy to match the brick. So I think I would rather work on that field.
Understood. Good. And that was conclude your response.
Yes, that's
All right, good. Just making sure. Very good. Board discussion and a vote on this agenda item. I'll start since everyone else is quick to start. I usually wrap up. I really like it's a very contemporary building, but when you look at the richness of the facade and the thought that has gone into those elements of the design that are elaborate, such as the masonry and such as the fretwork, I think that it's very nice and is cohesive. And I believe the applicant has, to the extent that they can, responded to both the considerations of staff as well as the comments of the board. So I think the project's coming along nicely. I think the color palette is appropriate. I understand the applicant's reason for maybe wanting to have some contrast with buildings around it. And it has a very strong vocabulary for that block, but I think that that's probably good that it's not deferential to less exceptional buildings in that block. Further board comments.
This is infill property, which is very difficult always. So very well done. It just found its place in it. It's modern and elegant and modest. And I think also, looking at the inspiration and how it was interpreted in its modern contemporary way, it's really plausible to me. And there's the screen, there's I mean, everything it's all speaking to the location. But it's an on modern way. And as far as the CMU, I don't think you will see it. And you said you will have some kind of screen.
We don't want to see it
even
either.
more.
That's the
So it's, I think we should consider to have it exposed to CMU. I guess only windows, if you revisit that, so you get a little bit more verticality with the horizontality in there. And that's kind of it. And obviously working out the grading will be, I don't know, the concrete or metal.
I saw Mr. Bello and his team nodding along with the conditional approval on CMU, I think, as well as nodding along with if additional screening was necessary for mechanical. That it was
Yes.
understood that the architect wanted that. So if the mechanical is going to be visible, some additional steps could be taken. Further board comments?
Go to the rendering from Anson Street. I mean, that drawing is good. I mean, it's, really elegant. I like how clean and simple it is, simple in a good way. The cornice, obviously it's a rendering, it's very abrupt, that between 3 and 4, which, as I understand, that was the goal, is to kind of cap your height. I just, maybe in the detailing of it, there's a way to make it a little more tied to the building. I think it seems a little foreign, like it kind of came from space and just landed around. So maybe there's a way to integrate. I don't know if it's the metal from the canopy below, if somehow like the joint pattern or something appears there, just to make it a little more tied to the building.
It can still be prominent, but maybe tied to the building.
Yeah. Maybe it's the color. And again, she should have done it in watercolor.
Next time.
It would look very cohesive. It's just really abrupt. So maybe it's just, it's obviously metal and not brick, but if the color tone was more similar, might work. And then the curb detail I hadn't picked up on, but concrete seems like not good enough. It's becoming a part of the storefront at that point. So what would be materials you would expect below glass in a Charleston storefront? And there's stone, tile, wood, metal. It's a little tricky because you have like a wedge shape. So I don't know how to pull it off, but I think because it's right there at the storefront, it should be considered.
Okay, very good, Mr. Ramos. Further board comments? Mr. Brown, Sal?
I'm going to argue with you.
Go ahead, please.
I think the cornice is just right. And, that story above, that's actually used to call cornice story. And that's where this really nice separation, clean to me.
So what I'm hearing is not restudy, but maybe just a little further
Not
study,
so
just kick the tires.
It's a restudy.
I don't know.
Further study.
Further study. Mr. Bellows, the one who introduced that.
If I may interject, I mean, I spent some time looking at that because the color threw me too, and it actually is rendered in a lighter color, but color call outs have it matching all the other metals.
The intent is for it to be black. I think we
Yeah.
should show some things lighter so that you can see it in the renderings better. Because black hides all detail. So.
And it talks to the context. So
Further board comment? If not, a motion.
With
Staff conditions and board comments.
staff conditions and some of the board.
Final approval to staff or no?
Yeah.
Final approval to staff. So the motion is for preliminary approval incorporating board and staff comments. The staff comment related, the conflicting board comments are duly noted. With final approval left to staff.
Yes.
Including detailed drawings. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay.
Either one.
See, you were silent on, so you get to second that one. So it's in proper order. Ms. Ramos, how do you vote on the motion?
Yay in favor.
Ms. Socha,
And
Mr. Brown,
Yeah, in favor.
myself, yay in favor. Thank you to the applicant.
Thank you.
Very good. That concludes our agenda and we stand adjourned.
Okay. I'll take your signature on those minutes that we approved.
You guys are divided, I could just ask one or both of you, just two very brief questions about.
Sure. But might be kind of. You get to do the interview.
Absolutely not. That's, I believe you're going to ask about the use, which is not something that we consider.
Yeah. We can't.
Yeah, I won't ask anything that is out of your guys' realm, so I just kind of want to ask, you approved unanimously, like.
Yeah, we had 4 members voting. We approved it unanimously because it was a
And-
very nice contemporary piece of art.
Yeah, how you think it,
Stands.
how you think that exactly, like how the look of the building will add to the neighborhood that it's going into, just, I'm not trying to push you guys into a corner by any means. I'll bring my camera over, here, if that's okay.
Well,
There we go. Your students should get interviewed over here and talk about what a wonderful opportunity this is.
Sure. Are you in charge of cutting off the report?
Yeah, I'm, well, because of occurring things earlier, I just want.
You would like some certitude?
Doubly sure. I think.
If you hit in. Thank you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Super exciting, but.
Thank you. Well, I'm not in a picture. Don't worry about that.
Next one, I'm not gonna be on this.
Yeah, it was voluntarily done.
We've had that come up a couple times with them because of the phases. There are things that if you just knew how it applies to these buildings, it doesn't work. So we've extended them some latitude. Sure. We've also done some